seesaw or teeter-totter. So on the inside of these towers on each side of the river, there is a massive chunk of concrete, many thousands of tons worth of weight necessary to lift the bridges into the air. And these bridges are all functional. They raise 50 to 60 times a year when the sailboats travel between the river and the lake, depending on the time of the season. We're going to use this first bridge here as a curtain. Watch it rise through first. Let's dive right in. We're going to start here to the left with this eye-catching skyscraper, blue, green, and wavy, like 3 stairs up into the clouds. This is the St. Regis. It is about 3 years old. It was finished in 2020. It's a high-end residence and hotel. It is currently the 3rd tallest building in the city of Chicago, but more importantly, it is also currently the tallest building in the world designed by a woman. Her name is Jeannie Gang, and she runs the architecture firm Studio Gang. And Studio Gang is crushing it. Okay, so they're working on an $8.5 billion renovation of O'Hare International Airport right now. Now listen, that's about as big of a contract as you can get as an architecture firm, and they beat out all the biggest names in the world of architecture to get it. So that shows you how well Jeannie and her team are doing these days. I'm a huge fan of this building. Jeannie specializes in a form of architecture called geological contextualism. That sounds complicated. Basically what that means is she just likes to imitate the geology of the surrounding land in her architecture. That is why this looks like 3 rivers flowing up into the sky, right? Because it's right here on the Chicago River. There's another form of this style simply called contextualism, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and that just means any building that's in relationship with the area that surrounds it. I'll show you some really cool examples of that. The top right corner of another building coming into view, it looks like it's covered in wavy white fins. So those fins are actually all balconies, and each of them is uniquely shaped. When you stand next to wavy waves of water, right, cascading down the side of the building. And that is another example of geological contextualism, right? Imitating the land that surrounds the building. When Aqua Tower, that building with the balconies, was finished in 2009, it was the tallest building in the world designed by a woman, Jeannie Gang. So when she finished the St. Regis, she just beat her own record. She's got number 1 and number 2 right here in Chicago. But let's take a break for buildings for just a moment, because I want to talk to you about the Chicago River. I'm going to tell you a story about one of the top 5 feats of engineering ever undertaken on U.S. soil. It has to do with this river. So right, river, that would make too much sense. They came to reverse the flow. So we sent our polluted water somewhere else. They dug a 28-mile channel from the south branch of the river, connecting this river to a series of rivers that empty into the Mississippi River, which of course flows into the Gulf of Mexico. And by digging that channel on a downward slope, they simply relied on gravity to permanently pull the water in the opposite direction, saving our drinking water, making this the only river on planet Earth that flows backwards, and making a lot of cities on the Mississippi River, field where the Chicago Cubs baseball team plays. That is all the same Wrigley. His name was William Wrigley. We called him the chewing gum magnate. So of course, that's how he made his millions, through the Wrigley Candy Company. In fact, this building was built entirely out of chewing gum. Profits. Okay, listen, folks. The jokes aren't going to get much better, so brace yourselves. You're in for a long tour. This building was finished in 1924. It was modeled specifically after La Giralda Cathedral in Sevilla, Spain. So we call this style of architecture Spanish Revival style. Now the Wrigley building is covered in 250, and I bet you can't guess what this one's called. Trump International Hotel and Tower from 2009, designed by Chicago's very own Skidmore, Owings & Merrill architecture firm. We call them SOM for short. They're a pretty world-famous architecture firm. And remember I was talking about contextualism, right? This is our first example of straight contextualism. Now you'll notice 3 patio setbacks at various heights along the building. You got 2 on the right and 1 on the left. They design where you design a building to be in relationship with its surroundings. And the cool thing about regular contextualism is it can be literally anything near the building. The river, the sky, other buildings, sculptures, landmarks, anything. The lead architect on Trump Tower, his name is Adrian Smith. He's often called the world's tallest architect. He is only 5 feet 7 inches tall. That's pretty average. But he did design most of the world's tallest buildings. So that's how he got that nickname. Adrian Smith, the world's tallest architect. See if you can remember that name. It will pop up later on the tour. Adrian Smith. Wow. Just was not expecting this sun. I'm not mad about it, but unexpected little. If you looked at the radar of the weather today, it is all green, literally around the city of Chicago. We are like an oasis in this storm right now. All right, two of the most photographed structures in the city. We got the twin corncob towers of Marina City here to the right. Now, Marina City was designed and built in the 1960s by architect and visionary social scientist Bertrand Goldberg. And you know how we reversed the flow of the river to clean up our drinking water? Well, we kept polluting the river. So in the 60s, when Marina City was built, the river was still super gross. It smelled bad. People didn't live down here. It was industrial or commercial, but not residential. But Goldberg, the architect, he wanted to change that. He wanted people to start living downtown. There was no support for it. No restaurants, no entertainment, nowhere to wash your clothes. So he put it all in his building and designed the country's first mixed-use residential skyscraper complex, a city within a city. So let's imagine for a moment it's the 1960s. You want to move into Marina City. This is what you're going to get. You'll move in upstairs where you have to furnish a pie slice-shaped apartment, which is kind of tough. Then you're going to live above your valet parked car, your parked yacht. Anyone's ever driven a car off of one of those balconies into the river? Well, the answer is, this is America. Of course we did. It was the movie The Hunters. Steve McQueen drove a car off one of those balconies in the river. It was an iconic action scene. You can look it up on YouTube, The Hunter. But folks, Goldberg was so successful in Marina City that we began to embrace the river. We continued to clean it up. We built alongside it even more. And by 2016, we sealed the deal. Finished our river walk. Now this river walk is 1.3 miles long. It travels along the side of the entire main branch of the river. It cost $112 million, but it was worth every penny. It brought more people down to the edge of the river than we thought possible. The architect of the river walk, her name is Carol Ross Marmy, and she designed each section of the river walk to have its own distinct purpose and personality between two bridges. So my favorite room, and that's what she calls each section, a room. My favorite room on the river walk is here to the left. This one is called the River Theater. Now, for a long time, I didn't know why it was called the River Theater. Until this summer, my partner and I took our dog, sat down at the River Theater for a few hours, and I realized, oh, the river is the show, right? Kayaks, yachts, party boats, tour boats, all kinds of action happening on the river. It's a lot of fun. Great way to spend a few hours of your day. Now, folks, listen, there are not many river walks on Earth, let alone river walks this stinking beautiful. Okay, so when you're in Chicago on the river walk, it's a great and gorgeous way to spend some time during your trip here. The area of the city to the left where that river walk is located has a nickname. It's called the Loop because our public trains loop around this downtown city center. Now we call our trains the L. That's short for elevated, since most of the tracks are raised above the ground. And I'd like to encourage visitors to the city to be bold, be brave. Take a train or bus. You're not that scared. And they're so much cheaper than an Uber or Lyft or a taxi. $2.50 for a single trip. Or how about this? Unlimited train and bus rides in a 24-hour period anywhere in the city for a $5 day pass. Cheapest way to get around. I don't have a car because I don't need one. Now you're going to see a lot of older buildings on the tour, and one had its own zip code. From 1929, this is the massive and gorgeous Merchandise Mart. The first example of our first major national style of architecture in the U.S. called Art Deco. Now let me explain to you the three most common features of the Art Deco style that you can see here beautifully. First, you got those inset windows which create vertical racing stripes. And it's covered in machine-stamped repetitive patterns and polished limestone. That is your Art Deco style. Now, remember, this was 1929. That was the peak of what we called the Roaring Twenties here in the U.S. It was a period of optimism, opulence, luxury, right? Everyone thought they were invincible in the U.S. They were like, woo, we're rich, nothing bad will ever happen to us. Definitely not later this year. So this style was created to express all the optimism that people were feeling at that time. And we're going to see a lot of Art Deco buildings on the tour today, but it was a short-lived style, and I'll tell you why it was short-lived in a little bit. Folks, right now, soak it in. We have reached Wolf Point, where the three branches of the river come together. This is where Chicago first began. We call this the trophy case of the river because of all these tall, reflective, blue glass skyscrapers. some of these are very sleek and futuristic looking, like the newest building here at Wolf Point, Salesforce Tower here on the right. This building was just left, which we'll talk about later. How about that one behind the Lake Street Bridge with the narrow, Y-shaped base? Looks like it's going to fall over. We are definitely going to talk about that building in a few minutes. Lots to talk about there. And we even have skyscrapers here in Chicago that look like giant sticks of deodorant. Or Hot Pockets. Or McDonald's apple pie boxes. You guys get it. It's a pretty big shapes. Cool photo opportunity, folks, with the L and actually the Lake Street Bridge. But enough about this new stuff. I'm going to take you all back to 1898. Tell you about the oldest building we're going to see on our tour today. I'm talking about that big red box up ahead of the water. Now I know it's kind of unremarkable looking, but it's got a great story. This is the Fulton House, finished as cold storage freezer building in 1898 for the meat packers. Now, because it was a freezer building originally intended for the new owners, it took them over 3 months to defrost the building because they discovered 4-foot thick walls that were packed with cork and horsehair, which was an early version of insulation before styrofoam was invented. In the 70s, the windows and balconies were cut into the building, and it was converted into a residential structure. Condos and apartments in the Fulton House today. But we have another rich bit of history here. The Carroll Avenue Railroad Bridge finished in 1908, 10 years later. It was decommissioned in 2001, and in 2007 it was deemed a Chicago landmark. That means you can't tear it down. That's why it's permanently raised on the side of the river. It is still secure. We check and make sure it is safe while it stands there. That shows you that massive amount of concrete counterweight that these bridges need to raise, right? So that one over there is a little over 6,000 tons of concrete necessary to lift that bridge in the air. All right, folks. Designed by architect Harry Weiss. And Harry Weiss was an avid sailor. He was obsessed with sailboats. Can you tell? It's covered in triangles like sails, right? It even has the round porthole windows like you have on a boat. Now this is a great example of post-modernism. That's a style of architecture that you can kind of think of as like the abstract art of architecture. Whimsical, unique shapes, materials, and colors. The 4 of these sold for between $250,000 and $300,000 back in 1988 when they first sold, but the second one would have left. But first, I'm going to take a short break on the mic here as we pass by these residential townhomes, and we're going to make a U-turn so we can go on to the South Branch where there's a lot more cool stuff to talk about, including the tallest building in the city, Searstown. So I'll be in the aisles. If you have any questions, raise your hand, let me know. I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, visit Jordan at the bar. How did we clean up the river? I told you we reversed it, right, to clean up our lake, but we kept polluting the river. It wasn't until 1972 when the U.S. Congress passed the Clean Water Act. We had no choice, we had to clean up this river. Before that act was passed, you better believe buildings had their drain pipes emptying directly in the river. You could see all kinds of waste dumping in this river. You can't do that anymore, you're going to be fined a lot of money. There are strict laws against polluting the river today. Now in the 70s, things were so bad there were fewer than 10 species of fish left in the river, but today there are over 70. So that shows you how far we've come. I was just talking to those folks in the back, though, that this river still not where swimmable by 2030. So we are making really, really good progress. When you think about it, we had been dumping all of our garbage and waste in this river for 150 plus years. So it's going to take us a while to clean it up, right? And we're making good progress. So I'm feeling pretty hopeful about cleaning this river up. All right, folks. Very obvious, very confusing. Let's talk about it. This building straight ahead, tall and skinny with a narrow Y-shaped base, right? How is it standing up? Well, this is 150 North Riverside from 2017, designed by Getch Partners. And with this building, it really is all about that base. That's the kind of humor you're getting on this tour, folks. So let's talk about it. The back 2/3 of the lot that it sits on is occupied by active underground train tracks. And then in the front, by the river, the city has a zoning law that says that all new buildings built next to the river have to be set back at least 30 feet from the river's edge. So that leaves this piece of land with only 20% buildable space. That base is 39 feet wide and occupies the only piece of land that you can build on. That's the width of this boat. So with such a tall, skinny building on a very narrow base, the question becomes, why doesn't it just fall over? Which I think is a pretty fair question to ask. And the answer is, it sways in the wind. Now let me tell you why that's a good thing. The wind hits the side of a skyscraper, it puts a lot of stress on the foundation where it's built down into the ground. So if the building did not sway in the wind, that wind could crack.